Angelica.
I'm Brienne.
And I'm Jada.
Before we begin our presentation, you are listening to WBPG LP F102.9 FM Boston Praise Radio.
In our broadcast this week, we'll be sharing 3 stories with you from across the African diaspora. The main purpose of this presentation was to share with you a collection of legends and folktales that we have a cultural connection to. So many of the stories we're told as children come from European literature, stories like Cinderella and Beauty and the Beast, etc. All of us know, but how many of you can say you know African folklore? A story of a girl who killed the king, or of the slaves who flew away to freedom. And then there's the story of a man and a river mermaid from the islands. We're here to share these stories with you today. Many of us don't know these stories, and we feel it's our responsibility to tell them. So sit back, perhaps remember, or enjoy. Then you may tell others around you that these folklores won't be lost. You're listening to WBPG LP 102.9 FM Boston Praise Radio. Now, Brienne, I believe you have a story that's from West Africa, right?
Yes, before I begin, I would like to ask anyone listening not to call in while we are telling the folklore, and instead comment in the chat, as well as stand by to call in and understand if we place you on hold for just a moment. We would still like to hear from you. I chose folklore from Nigeria, which is a country in West Africa. The story is called Of the Girl Who Killed the King. There was an old town named Calabar, the very famous king named Mbatu. Mbatu was always at war and won most of these wars, where all the prisoners he took were made slaves. Mbatu had many enemies because of this, and he was very rich. Specifically, one of his greatest enemies was the people of Itu, who were very upset and wanted to kill Mbatu. But they knew they would never be able to defeat him in a battle. So the Itu people promised a witch who lived with them lots of money and cloth if she killed him. Now, this witch could also turn herself into anything, and so she turned herself into a young and beautiful girl. She got a very sharp knife and went to Old Town Calabar. As I said in the beginning, the reason the witch is trying to kill the king is because the king has many enemies from his wars, and the town of Itu is one of his greatest enemies. The witch's name was Oyekin. When she arrived in Old Town Calabar, a play was being held. And so, she walked around so that everyone could see how beautiful she was. Word spread of her beauty, because everyone believed she was worthy to be the king's wife, and King Mbatu called for her to his castle. Once the king saw her beauty, he decided to marry her that day. Oyekin did not expect to get her opportunity that quickly. Because of this, Oyekin prepared a meal for the king, which she put a strong sleeping medicine in. After washing up in the river, she carried the meal to the king on her head and presented it to the king. The king ate the meal immediately and began to fall asleep because of the strong medicine. Before I continue, why do you guys think that the king trusted the witch enough to marry her immediately and eat a meal she made?
Well, for me, I think that to him, he sees this beautiful young woman, has interest in him. So it's like, might as well, like, hold her and, like, hold her if he's interest in her.
True.
He's also like this big, strong king, so I don't think he's expecting anybody to try that.
Yeah.
She picked a great disguise.
Oh, yeah. That is so true. To continue the story, after he began to fall asleep in his chair, they went to the king's chambers, and at midnight, when the town was quiet, Oyakin drew her knife and cut off the king's head. She put the head in a bag and walked to Itu, where she presented the head of King Mbatu to the king of Itu. Once everyone in Itu had heard that King Mbatu was dead, they rejoiced and planned to attack Old Town Calabar. In the morning, King Mbatu's wife knocked at his door and found the king lying in his bed with no head. The whole Old Town Calabar mourned, and it did not connect in their minds that the pretty stranger was responsible for the death of their king. They were also unprepared for a fight, and surprised when the king of Itu and his soldiers attacked them. Quickly, Old Town Calabar was defeated, and many of the people were taken as prisoners. Now, before I ask a question, please feel free to call now at 617-282-7794 if you have a comment on this West African folklore. You are listening to WBPG LP 102.9 FM Boston Praise Radio. Now, why do you think that the people of Old Town Calabar did not think that the witch killed the king?
To them, they see this beautiful young woman, and that's not their first instinct that she would be the one to kill him, I think.
Yeah, what Jada said. Like, no one's expecting that, especially because she just married him.
Yeah.
True. Yeah, I definitely agree. Now, this folklore was one about a tyrant king who was hated by many people and trusted a stranger that ended up taking his life. From this tale, anyone can learn that you should never trust a stranger under any circumstances. And you are listening to WBPG LP 102.9 FM Boston Praise Radio.
Wonderful story, Bien. Well, I have another folklore, but from here in North America. It was passed down since slavery and had a special purpose. During slavery in North America, a story spread like wildfire among the slaves. One full of magic, connection to ancestry, and freedom. The folklore is as follows. They say the people could fly. Say that long ago in Africa, some of the people knew magic, and they would walk up on the air like climbing on a gate. And they flew like blackbirds over the fields. Then, many of the people were captured for slavery. The ones that could fly shed their wings. They couldn't take their wings across the water on the slave ships. Too crowded, don't you know? Before I continue, have any of y'all heard this story before?
No.
Yeah, not before you told us.
Yeah. Well, let me continue now. The folks were full of misery then, got sick with the up and down of the sea. So they forgot about flying when they could no longer breathe the sweet scent of Africa. Say the people who could fly kept their power, although they shed their wings. They worked along with the other folks in the fields. All the workers heard the sting of the overseer's words. They felt the snarl of the driver's whip around their legs. They felt their clothes being torn to rags and their legs bleeding onto the earth. Then, one day, one of the slaves started talking about, the time is come. He raised his arms out to the others, and he signed the ancient words that were a dark promise. He said to them all, around to the others in the fields under the whip, Kum yale, kum tambe. Kum yale, kum tambe. There was a great outcrying. Ah, ah. The bent back straightened up. Old and young who were called slaves and now could fly. They joined hands. Say they would ring, sing. They rose on the air. They flew in a flock that was black against the heavenly blue. It didn't matter. They went so high, way above the plantation, way over slavery. In your opinion, what do you guys think happened to the slaves here?
Like, well, in the story, they obviously flew away to freedom, but, like, if you think about it, that could mean a couple different things.
Right.
Well, as Angelica said, I agree that they flew probably away to freedom, and it could, as you said, it could mean, like, they could have actually, like, gone and left the plantation and flew back to Africa, or they could have died and, you know, gone to heaven, where a better place. And when you actually think about it, it's not so sad, because they would be going to a place where they could be free.
Right. Keep those opinions in mind. Well, let me wrap this folklore up with this. Well, they say they flew away to freedom. The slaves who could not fly told others, the people who could fly, to their children, when they were free. When they sat close before in the fire, in the free land, they told it. They did so love the fire, light, and freedom, and telling. And now me, I have told it to you. Now, before I go on, please feel free to call now, 617-282-7794. And if you have a quick comment, you are listening to WBPG LP 102.9 FM Boston Praise Radio. There is some disagreement between where and how this tale originated, and even more disagreement about what exactly happened to the slaves in this story. Some believe we are meant to take it literally that the slaves flew away back to Africa, back to freedom. Some others believe the fly-in was the slaves running away from the plantation, which led to slaves using forms of fly-in as a code to run away after they heard this story. However, some historians point to the historical context of when this story originated. In May of 1803, a large numbers of Igbo were taken captive on a slave ship called the Wanderer. There, 75 slaves overtook the ship, and after running in the ship on the land of Dunbar Creek, ultimately they chose death over slavery by drowning. This act inspired many things, including other rebellions and well-known lyrics of "O Freedom," which states, "Before I be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave," by Toni Morrison in the Song of Solomon.
Okay, now it's time for my story. And before I start, I want to remind you that you're listening to WBPG LP 102.9 FM radio. And feel free to call in at 617-282-7794. My story features Mama Dlo out of the Caribbean storytelling tradition. I heard stories similar to this when I was young, and it begins when one day a man wakes up suddenly. He wakes his wife up to tell her the dream that he had, but she turns over to go back to sleep. When he does this, he says, "Wake up. Don't you know that it's morning already? Get up and make me some coffee. It's almost time for me to go to work." Now, his wife is still sleepy and is tired of him waking her up every morning to go on about some dream he had. She said, "What dream is it you're talking about? A big man like you only believes in dreams. Every morning you want me to interpret some dream you had. Them things you dream about aren't real, but tell me anyway." He tells her his dream. In it, rain was falling. Through the rain, he sees a woman coming toward him, but as soon as he reaches her, the woman turns into a crab and runs down in a hole. His wife laughed, "Ha!" dismissing his dream. "You really are a big child." Later on, the man leaves for his job in the garden. He interpreted the dream as a good omen and believed something good would come his way. He walked down the road to get to his garden with his cutlass in hand and his bag on his shoulder. When he got to the garden, he worked, digging and chopping, with the dream on his mind until late in the day. But by that time, he had let go, dismissing the dream entirely. When he started on his way home, the sun was beginning to set. On the way, he came upon a bridge. The man sighed. He was tired from working all day, so he decided to rest on the bridge. He sits on the rail and puts the bag of yams he had dug down. He looks around at the forest to see he's completely alone. Even though he didn't see anyone else around him, he heard the voice of a woman whispering in the water. He's surprised by the noise, so he begins to look around frantically until a whistle noise pierced the air. He looks around again, and that's when he sees her, the woman from his dream. She sat on the riverbank in the shade of a tree, combing her hair. When she saw the man, she gave him a smile and a wink. So before I continue, I want to ask you who you think this woman is, and what ideas do you have about her already?
Well, I think that since he saw him in his dream, that he is meant to talk to her or interact with her.
Yeah, I think that maybe she could be someone from the village that he had just seen before, and so the person just happened to be in the dream because he had seen her before.
Right. All right. I need you to hold on to those ideas. So this made the man incredibly excited. "My dream came true. I have to tell my wife," he said. The woman smiled at him again, and the man moved down to the riverbank. When he reached her, she said, "You're a fine man. Do you love the river? Isn't it beautiful?" The man replied, "I love this river. I think it's the best river in Trinidad. I drink from this river every day. I catch fish and crabs and conch." And the woman yelled, "You cruel man, you hurt my river? You kill my animals. It's my duty to protect them from such cruel acts." The woman changed before his eyes. Her legs chained into a snake's tails. Scales covered her arms, and in her hand was a golden comb. The woman was Mama Dlo. The man turned around then and there and dashed to his home, where his wife was sweeping the porch. Before she can speak, he said, "I don't want to hear your story today. Go back and bring me the yams or there'll be no dinner." And to this day, there are stories of hunters who reported encounters like that all over the Caribbean with the mysterious Mamadlo. So we get what the point is here.
Yeah.
That if you harm the rivers, that Mamadlo will come after you. Altogether, it's to say that we have to be responsible and take care of the land, and she's like this figure to warn us to do so. Some further thoughts and explanations to connect our stories today in a moment. However, I want to remind you, you're listening to WBPG LP 102.9 FM Boston Praise Radio. Please feel free to call in now at 617-282-7794 if you have a question or comment. Also, feel free to type it in the chat. Now, Mamadlo, in the folklore I shared, is a river spirit from Trinidad, and she's known all over the Caribbean and by slightly different names. She's almost like a mermaid and lives in rivers. She has the upper body of a woman, a beautiful woman, with the long hair and a lower body of a snake, specifically an anaconda. She's the protector of aquatic animals like fish, and her counterpart, Papa Bois, protects the animals of the land, and he's sometimes named as her husband. Mamadlo means mama water in French. There are stories about mermaids all over the Caribbean in recent history. So you can kind of call this a cryptid, but there's one particular story about the River Mama at Flatbridge in Jamaica. That sounds familiar because in the story there was the man coming to a bridge, which is where he sees her. The River Mama is slightly different, but you can tell that they stem from the same place.
Yeah.
So there have been various accidents at that bridge, mainly to construction workers, like people that are trying to develop the area, and they claim that is because of the River Mama. So she links back to Africa. She comes from the African spirit Mamiwata and holds the influence of the goddess Oshun in the way she's depicted. There are like various creatures all over the Caribbean that connect back to Africa because they're all stemming from like the same place, and you can see, even though they're slightly different on each island, that they're basically the same thing. The entities of Caribbean folklore are a mix of African spirits that enslaved people had forgotten the names of, so they used the French and English names in some stories. In the French and English names that they had. In many stories, there are shapeshifters, like the witch in Brienne's story. To remind you, you're listening to WBPG LP 102.9 FM Boston Praise Radio.
Right now, you can call in at 617-283-9561 if you have any questions, and you can also comment in the chat.
So since we have some time, I want to ask y'all like how we feel. Like, what did we get out of these stories from researching them, and like what are some other things that you stumbled upon on your path to picking this one?
Sorry, repeat the question.
So it's a couple questions.
Yeah.
So what made you pick this story, and what else did you find on your way to choosing this one?
Well, I chose my story about the girl who killed the king because I thought it really showed like how what's that word? How like what you look like can be deceiving. Because in my story, like the girl, the king trusted her, and all because she was just a pretty girl, and thought that, as you said, that was like a really good disguise, because he thought that no pretty girl would ever try to hurt me. But as that just shows that how everything, like, you can't just trust anybody. And I chose this story to show like how a strong girl went, and she proves that you can't trust anybody. She proved that, and they took down a tyrant king, which And nobody likes kings that try to, take over all the lands in history. They've always been the bad guys. So I think I chose my story because it's just like a really good show of all of that.
Right. And for me, I chose the story because I wanted to look into America and like slaves and folklores back then. And with this one, I feel like I chose it because I found it interesting that over like to other people, that it could be interpreted as like when they're flying to freedom, that they could use this as a way to escape, while other people, to escape from from their slaves.
Hello?
And stuff. Yeah.
Okay, I'm thinking one there.
Sorry.
Right.
But I also find it interesting that
Alright,
there's
hold on.
like,
We got our caller. So, what question is it you wanted to ask? So, our caller here has a question for us. What question did you want to ask?
Can- is-
You're on air. We can hear you. Okay, anyway, as you were saying, Jada.
yeah, I was just saying how I find it interesting how you could interpret it in different ways onto why they why they flew to freedom, which is
Oh, also, if you're that caller who's listening, you can call back. We just couldn't hear anything you were saying.
yeah, that's pretty much it.
And
What-
oh,
So-
I just sorry. I just wanted to say that if you also can't call in, just make sure to comment in the chat.
So, what made me choose my story is that I love mermaids. They gotta be one of my favorite things from folklore and mythology, hands down. And it was kind of hard to find something written down coming out of the Caribbean because so many of these stories are oral, so they don't ever really get written down in a hard text, especially not online. There are paperback books you can find too, and I definitely want to get some. But I picked this story just because it's in a similar way to Brienne, where it's looks can absolutely be deceiving, and that it's this powerful woman who it's her duty to protect the forest and everything from people who would want to harm it. There's a ton of other mysterious beautiful women, spirit creatures in the Caribbean, La Jablesse, and she has the leg of a cow, but she hides it under long pretty skirts, and she's a really well dressed woman, but she lures in men at night who would beat and abuse their wives and stuff like that. So it's she's the one. It's a feminine kind of power thing, you know?
Yeah.
basically teaching them a lesson.
Yeah.
I really like that about your story, how it's showing power in women and strength, because a lot of times you don't see that in stories,
Right.
especially in European stories. There's it's the Beauty and the Beast and Cinderella. It's the prince saves the princess, you
Right.
know.
It's never really the female saving the day or at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's what I really liked about yours.
Yeah. She's powerful and she's feared, but she's also admired for being a protector, that Mother Earth type.
Yeah. That's it.
You don't see that enough anymore these days, that protector, unless
Yeah.
it's your mother protecting you. But
That's pretty much it.
I had a question for you guys.
Mm-hmm.
What do you guys think? Why do you guys think that hearing folklore is important today?
Because, everything has a root, right? All of the stories that we heard as kids have a root that, if you ever go back and read the older version of fairy tales, you like to see how they change over time. And they still have a lot of lessons that are still relevant. Like climate change and stuff. She's still Mama Lo is still relevant to that because
Yeah.
we have to protect the planet, you know?
True.
I agree. Basically, like a learning lesson of teaching us different ways of teaching us things that we should do, like saving the earth and protecting other people and stuff like that.
You know, what I've learned is that there's a moral to every story.
Right.
Like, there's a hidden message in every story from, like, you notice how, like, children's books, they have the most meaning because they want kids to learn other than just reading a book. And I've noticed that there, in every story, there's a message that you need to learn.
Yeah.
Or like some kind of commentary on the world. And I
Yeah.
love how they get more complex with the things that you read as we get older.
True.
Like, you love reading, and so do I. And it's just
Yeah.
like, books and stories are awesome, and there's always something to learn from them. Even if it's just like entertainment, you get something out of it.
Right.
And like with these stories that are so old, you can see the roots of everything, like how all of the stories that we have today come from those, like I said earlier, but how the stories that are still relevant. And so with that, I want to wrap up because it's time for ALB2 to come on.
Yeah.
This is WBPG LP 102.9 FM radio, Boston Praise Radio. Thank you for listening to us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello? Hi, you are listening to WPPG LP 102.9 FM radio.
What's up with y'all? It's your boy Ross, and I'm here with
Khadijah to our Khadijah.
and
Anissa or Nisa.
and today we're gonna be talking about society's beauty standards and hair discrimination on the youth, but especially on African American youth.
And don't forget, you already know you're listening to WBPG LP 102.9 FM, Boston Praise Radio.
And please call us at 617-282-0685 for your comments, and even if you have stories. That again is 617-282-0685.
Recently, on July 26, Governor Charlie Baker of Massachusetts signed a law creating a respectful and open world for natural hair, or crown, which bans discrimination based upon natural and protective hairstyles in workplaces, school districts, and professional organizations. It specifically targets discrimination against the basis of hair texture and or protective hairstyles such as braids, locks, twists, and bantu knots. In 2017, a local charter school claimed that two 15-year-old twins had violated the school dress code by wearing braids, and they were asked to take them out. After many complaints, the school changed the dress code. But this reminded me of the story where a black girl was told that she couldn't compete in a powerlifting competition because of her beads, and a few other girls helped her take them out so that she was eligible to compete. Have y'all ever heard that story?
Yeah, I saw the video last week.
Unfortunately, I haven't, but I have to look it up. I have to.
Yeah, you should look it up. So this also reminded me of my story when back in April of this year, I was playing lacrosse and I had braids in my hair and beads, and the referee told me that I couldn't play because of the beads in my hair, because they might get caught on something or because they were jewelry. And it made me wonder, does the Crown Act protect braids with beads during sports? And with that being said, when it comes to sports competitions, do you think that beads are jewelry?
In my opinion, no. I don't think they're jewelry at all. I think that they're, a part of the hairstyle, right? And I feel like the concern he was expressing wasn't really a actual concern. I feel like it wasn't going to harm nobody, right? You had it up, right? You had your hair up, you had it tied down, right? So there was really nothing to be worried about.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like wearing a ribbon with like putting your hair up or something. It's not jewelry. It's just a way to express the look, and it's not sometimes not even for a cultural standpoint. It's just the way you prefer. So it's not a jewelry. It's a hairstyle.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. So that leads me to my next question. Have you ever witnessed someone being discriminated against, or have you been discriminated against because of your race?
Myself, even if it was for like any sports I was doing, I was gonna play in a tournament, and there was this one referee who came up to me and said, "Oh, you can't wear this thing, whatever you have on your head, because it's gonna distract the players." And I asked if I can put a headband on either, to substitute it, and he said no because it's gonna distract him. I ended up asking my dad if I should do it, and he said, if you want to do it, then you're going to have to play. And I ended up doing it. I asked my coach, too. He said, it's your preference, so I ended up playing. But I felt uncomfortable in that situation because it wasn't really harming anybody. There was no way I was going to injure anybody. It was just to take care of my hair. But even still, he made me do it for no reason.
And it was like for hair protection as well,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, and there was no real concern. It wasn't even a real reason. It was an excuse.
Right.
Right, so.
Because I had done it before. I had done it many times, and it was just this one person who disagreed. I don't know why.
Were there another race?
Yeah.
Okay.
What about you?
Fortunately, I have not. But I feel like if I was put in that type of situation, I feel like my hair is my pride and my identity, and for somebody to tell me that I can't, expose my identity, I just wouldn't have it. I'd rather risk the game. A lot of people wouldn't say that because a lot of people, they need the opportunities, which I completely understand and respect. But for me personally, I wouldn't be able to do it.
Yeah.
So,
All
take
right.
a DJ too.
Okay. I'm going to start with naming the beauty standard society thinks are ideal for women. So, women are supposed to wear everyday makeup, work out in the gym, stay skinny with a tall hourglass shape, defined jawline, small nose, big lips, flawless skin, no signs of acne or aging, and many more. I feel like some of those traits portray some of traits of black women. That's just me personally. And not long ago, where the beauty standards were blonde hair and blue eyes of a typically white woman. And it's not a secret that black hair for the longest has been criticized, if not worse. What do I mean by worse? I mean by black people with braids or locks are treated like petting zoos. You guys understand what I mean? I feel like everybody's kind of seen a video of, another person of a different race touching a black person with braids or locks without permission, kind of treating them like an animal.
Yeah.
The beauty standards for men, however, in Western society, the male beauty standard is focused on hypermasculinity, golden skin, ruggedness, and a muscular physique are considered more desirable. So social media platforms such as Instagram and TikTok reinforce the standard of beauty for men. And the standard.asl.org says that society's unrealistic body standards create an immense sense of pressure among teenagers to achieve a perfect body, thus deteriorating their overall self-esteem and creating unhealthy habits. The idea of a perfect body is perpetrated through unrealistic photos of women and girls portrayed in the media. And I feel like it kind of ties into what we was talking about the first week about mental health and the eating disorders and how some things are fake online.
Yeah, so that means y'all should go on our Instagram and go watch it again.
Yeah, or YouTube.
Or our YouTube. Go watch it again.
Please. Yeah. There is no escaping the fact that skin color is also a beauty standard and deeply ingrained of desperate desire. History can explain some of our fascinations for lighter skin. Hundreds of years ago, skin color was a reflection of social standing. And I'm pretty sure everybody knows the trending videos on YouTube called light skins or dark skins. Yeah. These videos show a concerning amount of colorism within the black community. For those who don't know what colorism is, it's a prejudice or discrimination against individuals with a darker skin tone, typically among people of the same ethnic or racial group. This has had a huge impact on darker skinned females within the youth, having the considerations of bleaching their skin or putting perm and heat on their hair, causing huge amounts of damage, leading to these females doing a big chop, which is cutting majority of their hair. If you didn't realize earlier, I called dreadlocks only locks due to the history of the name dreadlocks. According to the Tharps, the modern understanding of dreadlocks is the British who were fighting Kenyan warriors during colonialism in the late 19th century. Came across their warriors' locks, came across the warriors' locks and found them dreadful, thus coined the term dreadlocks. With that being said, I'm going to pass it on to Roz, further continuing the topic.
Alright, and before I go into mine, you're listening to WBPG LP 102.9 FM Boston Praise Radio. And I want y'all to call in if y'all even have some personal experiences on your discrimination or just a question or any opinion you have. So along with beauty standards against African Americans, what Khadijah too said, there have been many instances where myself and other African Americans have either been suspended from school, kicked out of schools, not being able to walk at graduations, and so much more. Hair discrimination is not on the hair itself. It has a deeper racial meaning behind it. Most school boards and job boards lack diversity in their offices, and most of their policies for hair, or sometimes dress code, are targeted for African American hairstyles, which is why sometimes you will see either black males or black females with different hairstyles on policies on what hair you can wear. They say it's too messy in the case of Chastity Jones, a black woman from Alabama who was told by her human resources rep that her dreadlocks were against company policy because they tend to get messy. Even as far back as 1786, when laws were enacted in Louisiana requiring Creole women who are of mixed European and black heritage to wear a head covering. Wearing a tignon, which resembles a scarf over their hair, became mandatory because these women's elaborate hairstyles supposedly attracted undue attentions. But however, a tignon served as a badge of inferiority, identifying lighter-skinned Creole women as African descent and belonging to the slave class. So today I'll be giving y'all some stories on some instances where African Americans were affected by hair discrimination, and I'll be asking y'all opinions about each story. Is that good?
Yep.
Yeah.
And I want y'all to call in with your opinions too.
Yeah, at 617-282-0685. That is 617-282-0685.
Okay, so a Texas school district suspended a black student by the name of DeAndre and told him that he would not be able to walk out graduation this spring unless he cuts his dreadlocks. And the controversy erupted on the same day as MLK Day, and so the school board of the school said this is not an issue of race, but many local activists say otherwise. Some activists stood by the student, DeAndre Arnold, after news of his suspension got out. From Gary Monroe, who was part of the United Urban Alumni Association, said, "This is a black and white issue. DeAndre should not have went through this situation, and neither should have his family," end quote. But I expect it from a board that has a zero diversity. Monroe also said if the board does not resolve this issue soon, the United Urban Alumni Association will take the case to federal court. Superintendent Greg Poole said, "This is a decision not about the dreadlocks or the race, just about the length of the teen's hair. There is no dress code policy that prohibits any cornrow or any method of wearing the hair. Our policy limits the length, and it's been that way for 40 years." So I wanted to question y'all about that last quote when he said it limits the length, not the race, but in the pictures you can clearly see white males with long and shaggy hair, but longer than DeAndre's, but they still got to walk at graduation. So how do y'all feel about that?
For them to say that it's not about race and there being clearly another race with longer hair than DeAndre's shows that it is. It's black and white as it is. It's right there. And you said that their policy?
Yeah, it said the policy had been that way for 40 years.
So yeah, they're using policy and rules that date back where it wasn't good for black people with their hair and just their skin color in general. So I think they need to update that.
Right.
Yeah.
Anisha?
Yeah, the policy should have been changed since 40 years ago, because why is the policy still the same?
Right.
And I feel like they're trying to make an excuse for it not being about race when it really is about race.
Yeah.
Right.
and not about length.
Because they didn't give a good reason. It wasn't a good reason
It wasn't.
whatsoever.
No, then even we're trying to express ourselves now in an age where we can, because even back then they were calling our hair messy. They were calling it unprofessional. Even though now more races are trying dreadlocks or trying braids, but when we do it, it's messy.
Yeah.
It's not good. So the next story was in Buna, New Jersey. A high school wrestling match has gone viral after teenager Andrew Johnson was forced to cut his hair in order to compete. The incident has sparked questions about why the teen was called out for his hair, and many believe the color of the wrestler's skin influenced the referee's decision. The referee, Alan Maloney, told the regional high school wrestler Andrew Johnson he needed to cut his hair or forfeit the match. And the video shows a trainer cut off the high school junior's dreadlocks. Johnson would then go on to win this match. So the crazy thing about this video is two things. One, in the background you clearly see a white male who had just finished wrestling have longer hair than Andrew and was not forced to cut off his hair. His hair was all shaggy and stuff, like it didn't look combed.
It was under the helmet, right?
Right, yeah, it was
So
under
he
the
didn't
helmet.
even tie it up?
No. And Andrew even asked if he can wear a cap over the dreadlocks just to secure it, but he said no. And Alan Maloney has been called out on other occasions to do other inappropriate and racial stuff, but I won't get into that. So, and then the second crazy thing about the video is from the start, it looked like the referee had a problem with him because at the end, when he won the match, he was even hesitant to even hold the boy's hand. Like,
he didn't want to give him his win.
yeah, he didn't want to give him his win, and when he finally lifted up his hand, he just put it right back down, which I find so disrespectful. So how y'all feel about that story?
I feel bad for the kid. I really do. I feel like even after he won, he still lost something.
Yeah.
And it was a huge loss. It was a part of him. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
I really agree with what you said. Like,
Mhm.
he won, but he lost.
Yeah, and I feel like him cutting his dreads was a bigger loss than actually winning the competition.
Mm-hmm.
It may have been important to him because probably there was scouts there. I don't know his situation, you know what I'm saying? But at the same time, I know that there was, like, some type of hurt after.
Right, and like he was crying. He looked upset. You obviously be upset in that situation. Like
Yeah.
you just had to cut off your dreadlocks for no reason.
Right.
And the referee is still, well, he probably retired, but he's still wrestling. He's still coaching. Sorry, refereeing. Which, hey, that's how it is. So the next one was in Christ the King Elementary School in Terrytown, Louisiana, where the name was not disclosed of this little girl, but an elementary student was sent home for wearing a braided hairstyle. And the following year, the school displayed photos of black children to illustrate inappropriate hairstyles for its students, and the image including girls wearing braids. What's funny about that is I've been to schools where it would show inappropriate dress codes and all of that. It would show a lady with an afro. A girl with an afro. It would show some dreads, like messy dreads, some freeform ones, and some wardrobe. I couldn't remember what it was, but it was definitely targeted at African Americans. So how y'all feel about that one?
It was only African American.
Yeah.
Like, there was no other race up there at all.
Oh, not that I remember, no.
For somebody to tell somebody that they can't wear their hair and not actually have a good reason or just anything at that, to tell them that they can't wear it kind of shocks me.
Yeah.
That's just, I feel like that's really weird.
Mm-hmm.
Because if a person, say it like this, right? If a person with a different ethnicity happens to have blonde hair and you put a picture up on the wall, like with a girl with blonde hair and then like a little circle with an X in it, and like say, oh, we can't have blonde hair here.
Right.
Like, would y'all do that? No, they
No.
wouldn't.
No.
Then please call us at 617-282-0685 because we would love to hear your comments, and we would also love to hear your stories because I know there's many more out there, and you are listening to WPPG LP 102.9 FM radio.
And I sat here and named around like 4 stories in a row. It's just how crazy, like even with racism in America, how frequent it is. Like there's obviously different forms of racism. There's like you just plain out hating them. there's something called secret racism, where like someone like say someone of another ethnicity came up to you and looked at your hair and like you haven't gotten a retwist or something, or you haven't been in a salon, they'll sneak diss you and be like, oh, what's wrong with your hair today? Or they'll be like, oh, wow, your hair is wild, without saying anything or not even knowing why your hair is like that. So that's what I find disrespectful in some ways. And a study was shown that black students are more likely to be suspended for minor offenses such as hair violations, which leads them to develop resentment toward the educational system that suppresses their expression of black culture and identity, which again I 100% agree with. You are going to hate any opposite race that obviously hates you. Sometimes people won't, but with all the resentment that they done to you, I would hate them too. Would you or would you not?
I feel like there would obviously be some type of barrier between me and them. Because there's also some type of difference and some type of, what's it called? Some type of, they have more than me, you know what I'm saying? Like,
they're more privileged?
Yes, privileged. That's the word I was looking for. They're more privileged. And I feel like that's what's going to separate me and them.
Yeah.
So, like, would you be envious?
I wouldn't be envious because I feel like I know where I stand as a person and who I am. And they're taking my culture. They're taking what I got. You know what I'm saying? They're envious of me.
Right.
And that's the best hate you can get. You feel what I'm saying?
Yeah. Personally, I don't hate any race.
Right.
But, I mean, if you're, like, doing something racist or, like, you know, something crazy.
I'm going to call you out on it. That's just me personally.
Right. So now we're gonna read a little bit of the Crown Act article that Governor Charlie Baker has passed. So who wants to read first?
Do you got it? All
right. The Crown Act adds the term natural or protective hairstyle to the definition of Practices Act GLC 151B to include hair texture, hair type, and hairstyles, which include braids, locks, twists, bantu knots, hair coverings, and other formations.
So I actually have a question.
Yeah, what's up?
So with Governor Baker around the two girls that you have named, the twins, do you think that this law will change, you know, for students, for teachers, for just corporate America in general?
I think that it does change that because it's, as it says here, the hairstyles that include braids, locks, twists, and bantu knots. So nobody should be discriminated against no matter what workplace or what corporation that they go into.
The crazy thing about it is why does this have to be a law in general? I feel like this should itself be a human right. Like even in the Second Amendment when it says freedom of speech, that should be a way of freedom of speech because they said braids, locks, twists, bantu knots, hair coverings, and other formations. 5 out of 6 of those are definitely African Americans. You have to be specific now because of all the past instances, which the act is gonna help, but I feel like the damage has already been done, if you get what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And please call us at 617-282-0685, 617-282-0685. We would love to hear your comments and even if you have stories. And I would actually like to answer the question as well. I do think it's going to be there, obviously, to protect us. But at the same time, like Ross said, I feel like it should be a basic human right. It should be something that, why is it even a conversation? Why is it a problem in the first place? You know what I'm saying? What does my hair have to do with you? You know what I'm saying?
Because, like, protective styles like braids and locks and bantu knots, they're not just, like, they could be just for style and just to have the look, but they also to protect our hair.
Yeah. And
to, like, stop breakage. So...
Because I know for me, when I braid my hair, it's because I'm protecting my hair. I'm growing my hair out, you know what I'm saying? Locking moisture in, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So the other part of the law says, the law prohibits denial of employment and educational opportunities in the places of work, natural or protective hairstyles. The law aims to eliminate discrimination against people regarding natural hairstyles that are not related to the necessary qualifications for a position. So don't discriminate, which is exactly what it says. Just don't discriminate against people because of their hair. There was another, I didn't get to put it in the story. There was another woman who was denied a promotion because her supervisor said, she said she either had to cut off her dreadlocks or you could like quit because her hair would get messy. Yeah.
I don't see what that has to do with the job, but
Right.
you know, this is the
It
kind
has
of
nothing to do with
it doesn't. So with all this talk of like, you know, how we've been affected as a people, as a black community, of our hair and our skin color and our, you know, just everything in general, we want to say some jokes.
Ross, you got a joke too, right?
Right. For the first time in forever.
'Cause you didn't like the jokes last
Right.
time.
I'm not going first.
All right. Okay, I'm gonna go first. Did you hear about the guy having a problem with his curly hair?
No.
He decided to finally straighten things out.
Oh my god.
That was funny. Okay,
It was not.
but it was.
You're a hater. Like,
You
stop.
It's not funny.
All right, I got one more. How do you buy hair?
At the beauty supply store?
You have to pay. Get it? To pay? Oh. Wow.
Nah, that one didn't hit. Alright, so I was forced to say this joke. What did Michael Jackson say when he touched a hot pan?
I don't know. Alright, that was cool.
All right, you got some?
It's my turn?
Yeah.
Alright. Look, not too much on these jokes, okay? Why did the actor fall through the floorboards?
I don't know.
He was going.
Wait, what?
He was going. He was going through a stage.
Bruh.
Alright. I got one more. Why did the Scarecrow win a Nobel Prize?
A Nobel Prize? Why?
He was outstanding in his field.
Wow. That wasn't funny.
Yo, I laughed at your jokes. Like, the least you could
Because
do.
mine was funny. That's the difference. Anyways, thank you for tuning in. You are listening to WBPG LP 102.9 FM radio. Please call us at 617-282-0685 if you still have questions, comments, or even stories. We will be wrapping up. We will be here next Tuesday at 11 a.m. And I'm pretty sure that'll be our last broadcast.
Yeah.
That'll be our last broadcast.
So, yeah, you got to
So
tune
make
in.
sure to tune in.
Right.
It's going to be the best.
Right. Right.
5 stars.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And
A couple of educators from Georgia are watching. A couple of educators from Georgia are watching
Yeah.
on my live,
Yeah.
and they want to know, as young people, do you really believe your governor's going to support you guys with your natural looks? All y'all have natural hairdos.
he better.
Exactly.
Unfortunately, we're not old enough to like vote or anything like that.
Right.
But we are hoping that they do because, you know, they're the only ones that can really project our voice out there and
Yeah.
stand up for us and be behind us for what we stand for.
Yeah, shout out Mr. Baker. Shout him out.
Yeah, shout out Mr. Baker.
Shout out. All right, yeah. So I'll see y'all. We'll see y'all next Tuesday, and y'all have a good day.
Yeah, thank you for listening.